So in June 2021, Ryusei Aika's map set of Lost Umbrella got ranked. No, this video is not about how a rework catapulted the map from 6 to 8 stars, that's a story for another day. When this map came out, people were confused. The map received a barrage of very honest comments, such as, "Didn't know first maps were getting ranked now. How is Top Diff ranked? I think we need new ranking criteria," and my personal favorite, "Top Diff feels like someone's first ever map. Big Garbo, edgy mapping bros can suck it. You are the same people that would buy into any garbage as long as it's different, not being able to distinguish quality from mediocrity. Seethe." Based on this feedback, you might get the impression that this map has glaring issues and it never should have entered the ranked section. But if that was the case, how could it have gotten 20 hypes, over 4,000 favorites, and number 8 in Community Choice 2021? What is the story behind Lost Umbrella? The most controversial pattern in the map is right here. This is one of the most intense sections in the song, with kick drums and cymbals on every beat. Ryusei Aika chose to represent this with extended 3/4 sliders. Looking at the timeline, this leaves a 1/4 gap between each slider end and the next slider head. Combined with the high slider velocity, the player has a minimal amount of time to snap a large distance to each slider. This creates intense movement leading into every slider, which expresses the intense drums on every beat. To summarize, Ryusei Aika used a movement concept to express a certain part of the music. But why does any of that matter? Let's take a step back for a second. The central goal of every good Osu map is to represent a song. And there are many different types of maps out there, but when a mapper praises a map for being good, that tends to generally mean it represents the song well. Mappers use different elements to represent songs, including more general concepts like emphasis, contrast, and structure, and fundamentals like rhythm, movement, and visuals. If these words interest you, by the way, I would highly recommend watching OLC's video about the foundational ideas of mapping theory. The link is in the description. But anyway, back to Lost Umbrella. Hopefully it makes a little more sense now when I say the phrase, Ryusei Aika used a movement concept to express a certain part of the music. Well, looking at this pattern from a mapper's perspective, it represents the song just as well as any other good map. Great, so let's see how well it plays. This pattern is hard, like really hard. If you were to forget everything I've said in this video so far and just play this part of this map, you'd think it's absolutely ridiculous. So why didn't the mapper go back into the editor and ask himself, how can I make this pattern more comfortable? I mean, there are plenty of other maps that are way more fun to play. What's the difference between Sotarks and Ryusei Aika? Well, the answer is priorities. There are many different variables that factor into the mapping process, including all these words I mentioned before. Mappers aim to balance as many as possible, but for now, let's focus on balancing just 2, song representation and playability. Song representation is the topic we just covered, so what about playability? What makes a map playable? Well, that's difficult to answer. It's hard to truly call any map playable or unplayable in a binary sense. Instead, it's more like a spectrum. Let's look at 3 popular maps to understand this. This is Kira Kira Days, a comfortable jump map with very simplistic rhythm choices. These characteristics make the map playable for a large number of people. This is Lionheart, a stream map. It's still mapped conventionally, but it's much harder for a lot of people due to the intense tapping and stamina requirements. Because of that, this map is playable for a medium number of people. But then, let's look at Sputnik 3. This is a finger control map. It's infamous for its challenging rhythms. Even the expert difficulty has B-rank plays on its leaderboard. It's safe to say this map is playable for a relatively small number of people. The point is, different types of maps are considered playable by vastly different amounts of people, sometimes regardless of their respective star ratings. The question this provokes for some Osu players is why not just make maps that are playable for as many people as possible? Well, there are a few reasons, but with regard to song representation, sometimes it's just not practical to make a map as expressive as possible and as fun as possible at the same time. You can ask the opposite question from the mapper's perspective and reach the same answer. The key thing to understand is that neither perspective is correct. Every mapper just has different priorities. This is why it's hard to determine an objective best map in the game. Different people are always going to prioritize different things. Song representation versus playability is one of the simplest examples of that, but there are many, many more. You could spend days on end analyzing balances between mapping concepts. For some people, that's exciting, but for others, it's not really worth their time to analyze maps for anything more than how fun they are, and that's totally fine too. At the end of the day, mapping can be as simple or complicated as you want it to be, and I think that's what's so cool about it. Thanks for watching.